Today, guys, we are looking at Limelight Hydrangeas, such a beautiful flower of summertime. And you're going to see ways that we can get to ensure an abundance of blooms every year. My name is Marlene. Welcome to my home and garden channel. So, Limelight Hydrangea, as the name suggests, has a wonderful limelight hue coloration on the flower heads. And speaking of flower heads, they belong to the group Hydrangea paniculata or panicle hydrangeas, and that's because of the shape of the same flower heads. They're typically conical, but in some cases you may see more of a rounded shape. But either way, they're enjoyed in the landscape and they're beautiful on table settings for various occasions. They're not to be confused with your mophead hydrangeas, which are more of a, as the name suggests, a mop head shape is more of a dome, more flattened at the top. And they tend to be a little bit more high maintenance, as are lace cap hydrangeas right here. They're both very beautiful and they serve their purpose as well too in the summertime. But today we're going to be looking at the star of the show, which is Limelight Hydrangeas. So they may be enjoyed in containers and in your landscape. But what I enjoy the most about this flower, apart from the beautiful blooms, of course, is that they have a very wide growing zone range. It can be anywhere from 3A to 9A, which is really a lot for a temperate flower. And you can see how gorgeous they are out here in the sunlight. That's what they love. You can get smaller varieties, that are available if you don't have a lot of space in your garden. Types like Little Lime, Bobo, and many others are there. So there is a hydrangea for everyone. You can see how the prices are going there. It's going to be determining, how much you can spend based on the size, what's in your budget. So we're going to go ahead now and take a look, but bear in mind that they do change color to pink sometimes or purple. But the main color you'll notice for them is the lime green that you're seeing right behind me there in that beautiful, almost like a field of hydrangeas. Now, if you take a closer look in at them, just to see how beautiful the petals are, they're so gorgeous. And they're typically white, then they get green, and then as we mentioned earlier, you can get other colors like pinks, burgundies as the season wears on. So it just depends on the type that you have. And again, the prices are going to vary based on the size of the plant. It just depends on what's in your budget. But they're just so beautiful. I absolutely love them. And they're perennials and they're deciduous. So the leaves fall off, in the winter, they overwinter and then they come back for us. But let's take a look at the first thing to ensure lots of blooms every year. The first thing is that they like to have full sun to part sun, meaning 4 to 6 hours of sunlight per day. If over the years they're not getting enough sun, you're going to see less and less blooms because that is what they really need to give you their best. Now, if your garden is full of shade, you have other options, or just to put that out there, that you can actually get like your oak leaf hydrangeas like you're seeing right here. If you look at the leaves, you'll see how they're shaped, and that's where they got the name from. And I think they're pretty beautiful too. So don't give up, if you don't have a lot of sun in your garden, that at least you still have an option of getting an oak leaf hydrangea. Let's move on now to the next one, which is correct feeding. So plants like the ones you're seeing lower down there, they like to get lots of plant food throughout the season. But for your limelight hydrangeas, overfeeding them can actually be a major thing that can affect them negatively. They prefer just to be fed once for the season, and that is actually enough for them. They're no fuss plants. Over here now, you'll see that these are some options that you can use. Rose and flower care. And you can also use the other one that's to my right there. But they're slow release plant foods, which is great. You just apply it once. And you typically want to do this in the early spring, just as soon as you see the little leaf buds start to form out. You'll apply them. And I just wanted to show you, like this one, you have the part where you pour, the part where you sprinkle, and just to show you what the pellets look like. And you just basically mix it into the soil, get it a nice watering going for it there. And then it will be good to go, and it's going to slowly feed your plant over the months, and the directions are pretty much, on the containers, and I'll link them in the description box for you. So if they're overfed, what can happen? It's just a smaller variety. But if they're overfed, they can kind of get lanky and then they'll flop over. And if they're meant to be a larger variety like this, that's not what you want to see. You want to see robust looking blooms and a robust looking plant. Moving on to watering, another very important thing to ensure your plant is happy is to give it sufficient watering. They're not very high demand watering plants, but what I will say is if they're in containers, you'll want to water them a little bit more frequently. A good rule of thumb is to just stick your finger in the soil. If the first top inch of the soil is dry, then you'll want to go in and water them. And typically that may be twice a week. I'd say maybe once per week may work depending on where you are or how hot it is, but typically I'd say 2 to 3 times per week. And you just make sure you pull the leaves back if they're lower down, and you go in and you pour your water gently, and that should take care of them. Typically they'd say about a gallon of water each time you do it. It's better to deep water them so the roots can be a little bit more deeper in how they grow than to give shallow rooting and have to do it more frequently. But that's just a suggestion, if you don't want to be out there too often taking care of these wonderful plants. And of course, hand in hand with that is mulch. Personally, I do not like black mulch for the summertime because it pulls the heat in on your plants, and you have many other options if you prefer not to use that one like I don't. You can use like brown mulch, there's cypress, there's a red one. Not so much a fan of that either because of the dye that's on there, but whatever you prefer, it's best for you. And you'd want to put anywhere from 1 to 3 inches thickness of mulch around your plant, but try to leave a little clearing just around the base of the stem so it's not easy for plants to access onto it. For insects, I meant to access onto it. And I wanted to invite you at this time to subscribe to my channel if you've never done so before. I do lots of gardening topics, tips, and tours. We have a wonderful community here where we exchange ideas, and I absolutely love when you sign on. Moving on to the next one, and this is a big one, and it's pruning, because sometimes this can be a downfall for some gardeners because, you have your plants blooming, they look really great depending on your variety, and then the season starts to fade out, moving from summer into fall, and we tend to want to cut them back at that point. Now, you can deadhead them by just taking all the flower heads, but personally, for me, I would not. I love to see them in the winter landscape, especially if you have like little powder snow falling on them. It is so, so beautiful. Gracie's Home and Garden, she has lots of those in her winter garden, and it is just so wonderful to see. But this is the time to prune them, guys, when they are dormant. So because if you cut them early, then they're still active, then they're going to start putting out little buds, then they're going to get damaged when the first hard freeze comes. So this is what they look like when you've cut them back. And typically there's a rule of 1/3, meaning you try not to cut more than 1/3 of the plant. If it's small, you can use something like this right here. And if you have a larger plant or a lot of them, you can use something like these, and I'll link them in the description box below. Again, these are just suggestions. This is also a mini chainsaw. If you can get clean cuts across your plant from using this, then it's perfectly fine. You just don't want to have like jagged edges because that will encourage your plant to develop diseases, and we don't want that for them. So, it's just depending on what you have there. And over here now, this is some ornamental grass in front of some of them that were cut back just to show you how they look. And to me, they both got their hair cut, and I think they look perfectly fine, to overwinter for the next season. And just to move on to talk about the sun and afternoon shade. So even though your panicle hydrangeas, they love to have lots of sun, the best situation for them really is if they can get some afternoon shade. So maybe a building might shadow them off a little bit, maybe another larger tree in the afternoons, that's a plus for them. And this is for your panicle hydrangeas. If you could do that, that would be great. If they're out in the center of your garden, you may need to water them just a little bit more frequently so that they're not stressed out from the heat. If the leaves are flapping over already early in the morning, then that means that they are due for a watering, so you'll want to get that taken care of. But when they're at their best and healthy, it is just so wonderful. Speaking of that, even though they're, pretty resistant, they still can get pests and diseases. So we want them to, be happy. And these are some of the things that can happen, like root rot, spider mites, powdery mildew. These are all options that can take place. Lesser for these, but yes, it could still happen. So for root rot, it's a little easier to avoid in your container gardens because they drain out a lot more easily. But the main thing is not to have like heavy clay soil that's going to have poor drainage. So if they're in your flower bed and they're near to like a downspout where water is coming off and you're getting a lot of rains all the time, that's going to affect them negatively. They're going to get, it's just going to mess them up in there. So you don't want to have that. Now, like for spider mites and aphids, which they can get sometimes, this right here is a good one to use. It's not sponsored or anything, but I've had success with this in my garden. So I do, suggest that you can try it. And these are all linked in the description box below for you. And you want to use it at a milder time of the day, like say, maybe late evening, so they're not under stress when you're putting it on them. And the next thing is diseases. These are healthy right here, but they can get diseases, mostly fungal diseases I found. and that typically happens when they're getting, watered in the evening. But these are some options for you. Neem oil is really, really good. These are just two different ones I'm showing you here, but you have different types that you can buy to take care of your plants. And I'm showing you other hydrangeas because they'll have similar situations as well that can happen to them too, where if they get watered late in the evening and the water sits on them because the weather is hot and steamy, kind of sort of, they'll tend to be more susceptible to being infected by fungus. So it's best to water them in the morning, so that when you water them in the morning, then if there's any leaf water on the leaves, then it'll evaporate off in the heat of the day and they'll be fine. But if not, then in the evening you can just water at the base of the plant, so that way it doesn't splash on the leaves and cause any problems. And this video I did, previously, it talks about different types and different problems and how to overcome them. I'll link it at the end for you. But just to say that it's good to have good circulation on your plants, prune them in the right time of the year, just so airflow can go through them, and that way they can be healthier. You want to use your fungicides, where you can get them. Insecticidal soap is a good one, like we just looked at a moment ago. You have different types. These are mainly just suggestions that I'm putting out there. Of course, you can use whichever ones you like, but be sure to clear away any disease parts that your plant may have, and try to catch them soon, because when you have an early intervention on these things, it tends to help your plant to have a better outcome, and they'll do even more better for you. But these plants, they give us everything that they have time and time again. And I want to thank you so much for being so supportive of my channel, for purchasing the merchandise for my past and current members. Thank you so much for watching. Happy gardening.